Hey everyone! Welcome back to my channel, Book Talks with Yo. My name is Yoanna and today I'm sharing with you different ways to plot out your novel. When it comes to planning out my novels, I'm somewhat of a planster. I can't go into writing my novel without having a plan beforehand because that would probably stress me out. But I'm also not a plotter exactly because I don't have a very detailed idea of my story, like a very detailed outline or a plot map thingy before I write my story. So yeah, a planster. And whichever you are, a plotter, a panster, or a planster, I know they're confusing, but whichever you are, today I decided to share with you some tips and techniques on plotting out your novels that might interest you and might turn out to be for you. Some I've tried personally and some I haven't yet, but I find really interesting and I would like to try. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get into the video. First up, of course, we have the standard, pretty classic outline. And, if you don't really want to spend too much time on plotting or don't want to try any of the fancier techniques, then this one is for you. You simply write a plan for your plot. You write Roman letters for Roman numbers for the bigger parts of your novel, like Act 1, Act 2, or beginning, middle, etc., whatever works for you. Then you use the numbers to write each scene, and then you use whatever planning symbols you want to get your ideas on the page. And pretty much there you have it, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. But there's also another way to do this, and this is something I did for my first novel. And I wrote a small phrase or a very short sentence for each scene. And then with arrows, I led to the next scene and so on and so forth until the end. And I didn't exactly have everything figured out at the beginning, so I had to leave some blank spaces or write something like, oh, figure what happens here, or write a scene here or something like this. But yeah, you get the point. You can easily put your own spin on the classic standard outline method to make it work for you. Next, we have the reversed outline. And I've heard many people that say that this works for them and they find it really useful, especially when you're at the early stages of planning out your novel and you feel like you don't really have everything figured out. So what you do with the reverse outline is pretty much you write your ending. You write the ending of your story and then go back, reverse it, and see what led to this ending. What actions, what decisions build up to this ending. You see what the stakes were at the beginning, what actions the characters had to take or did not take in order to lead to that ending. And yeah, it sounds confusing to me, to be honest, and I don't think it will work for me, as I rarely know how I want to finish my novel when I start writing. This is something I'm struggling with. I rarely have an idea of how I want to finish it, but if you do, then this outline might be useful for you. Okay, next we have the 3-paragraph method. Pretty much what you do is you write one paragraph for each, your beginning, your middle, and the end of your story. And in those paragraphs, you tell yourself the story you want to tell. And you can be as detailed or as vague as you wish, and you can write about as many things as you have already figured out. And this way, writing about your story in this way can be really useful to help you figure out new ideas, to help you brainstorm ideas, but it can also help you spot any inconsistencies from the beginning, which would obviously save you a lot of time later. And I did this with my first book, but not with my first draft. My first draft was pretty standard outline, as I said, but I did it for my second round of edit, I think. And I wrote a paragraph for each of the sections of my book. And this helped me make sure that all of the plot lines were consistent, that they all made sense, and that they all had a place in my story. And of course, they were all resolved at the end. So that was great. And yeah, I did this, but I still have no idea how to give a summary of my book. Yay! The next plotting method is the mind map one. And mind maps are a cool way to visually represent ideas and the way they connect to each other. And you probably have had to make a mind map at some point in your life for something else, but they can also be a very fun way to plot out your novel. And essentially, there are a lot of ways to do this, and a lot of different ways to brainstorm ideas using this method. And a thing I've seen people do is some people write the name of their novel in a bubble in the middle of the page, and then in separate bubbles they write, for example, characters or setting or conflict, and then write sub bubbles of those sub bubbles. Yeah, that makes sense. And just continue to zoom in and be more detailed. Other people write, for example, chapters in the middle of the page in a bubble, and then write the numbers of the chapters and then what happens in those chapters, like bullet points or other separate bubbles. You can pretty much do whatever you want with this. You can be detailed, you can be not detailed, you can have a whole big sheet of paper and write the biggest mind map you want and then hang it on the wall above your writing space. Yeah, you can have fun with this, just experiment and see what works for you. Next, we have the visual storyboards. Some people just need this extra dose of visual stimulation when they are plotting out their novels or just writing them. And you can pretty much do whatever you want with this. You can make a collage of different texts, quotes, pictures you've printed or you've painted if you're talented. And it can be whatever you want. You can just scrap those together and make a beautiful collage. Or if you don't want to do this and this seems too messy for you and for your style, you can just make a board on Pinterest or some similar website if there is. I just know about Pinterest. And yeah, I know that many people use this actually as a plotting technique, not only as inspiration, but as a plotting technique, and find it great for them. It helps them realize their setting, the setting of their story, the tone, the mood. And yeah, I personally haven't tried this as a plotting method, and I don't think it would work for the way I write. But I'm sure thinking of making a Pinterest board for my current story to just inspire me along the way of editing. As I said, visual storyboards can be really inspiring for when you're writing your story or just thinking about it. It can help you brainstorm new ideas. And now that I'm actually thinking about it, I might make a Pinterest board for a novel I want to start working on soon, a new novel. I won't depend on it as a plotting method, but I think it will help me think about the setting, the tone, and the mood of my story, which is very important as this novel is slightly different, but this is a topic for another time. Next, we have the Snowflake Method. This one is somewhat similar to the mind mapping one, but at the same time, it's different. It is something like the bridge between the more structured and rigid ways of plotting your novel and the more bizarre or completely absent ones. And it was created by the writer Randy Ingermanson, if I'm not mistaken. And it sounds complex, but there are a lot of articles you can read about it. He has a book explaining this method in more details, and a lot of writers have been using it for years and find it really useful. I will try to briefly explain what this method is about, and in its essence, it creates a bridge, an overarching bridge of your story that you can later work with. And so, what you do, it encourages you to start with the simplest, most basic premise of your story that you know, just one sentence, and then it expands it, letting you know that you actually knew more about your story than you might have thought. And this is also another method that will help you spot those annoying plot holes and will save you a lot of work and problems later. So, okay, we start with the one-sentence summary of your story. Imagine that you have to hook and engage a reader with just one sentence of your story. This is the one sentence that is going to it's one sentence. So you just have to grab the reader. It has to explain your story in one sentence. Then we get that one sentence and we turn it, imagine that one sentence as a triangle. In sake of the metaphor. Just imagine this one sentence is a triangle. Then this one sentence, we are going to turn it into a paragraph. And if we are going with the metaphor, this paragraph is going to be is going to be star-shaped. And in this paragraph, you have to pretty much add more details to that one sentence that you've wrote, add the major plot points, add the climax, the resolution, and so on and so forth. Then the next step, still in that one paragraph, is to recognize the main characters of your story and their motivations, their goals, what is driving them forward, and their epiphanies, and so on. This is just still in that one sentence. We are still in a star-shaped form. Then, what you do is you turn this one paragraph summary of your story into a one-page one. And in this one-page summary, you write in more details about the things that you've already written. And what this writer suggests is that you take each sentence of that one paragraph summary and you turn them into small paragraphs on their own. And then what he suggests, we're still in that one-page summary, but we've already turned it into a more Snowflake form. Like, what you do here is you write a one-page summary of each of the main characters. You write about their goals, their motivations in a bit more detailed ones. And yeah, you write a whole page for your main characters and a half page for your secondary characters, because you still need to know about them. And then you write a summary of each character, a short, very short summary where you talk about their role in the story in a way, and how they're moving their journey throughout the story. And as well as that, you write about what they know and don't know at each point of the story. And Randy calls those your character Bibles, and I really like those because I love character profiles. Writing about them in a paragraph or on a page sounds a bit more confusing to me than the character profiles, like the ones with the different characteristics, but it still sounds something interesting. And then the next step, as far as I remember, is that we have to turn this one-page paragraph into 4-page summary or synopsis of your book. Here you have to be, of course, more detailed, and you have to spend more time on each aspect of your story. As well as that, we are still not ready. We have to make a list of all the scenes in your story and then write a summary of each of those scenes, like a short, very short summary. I know that this method sounds like a lot of work. It might sound a little bit confusing. It sounds like a lot of work, but it definitely is something that will help you with your novel. It will help you with your edits. And yeah, it sounds like something that would be useful and will help you spot any inconsistencies, any plot holes, which is essentially what we want. And I haven't tried it yet. I learned about it recently, so I haven't tried it out yet, but I might use it for my next novel that I told you I am planning to write, because this one is going to be a bit harder than what I've wrote, and I want to make sure that I have no plot holes and inconsistencies, because it's really important for me to that story has to be accurate and like possible, historically possible. So yeah, I might use the Snowflake method, and I make a separate video talking about it, because it's a very, very complex method. Well, it's not a very complex method, but it's more complex than the other ones, so it deserves a separate video. Next up is a plotting method that I recently tried for my current writing project, and this is using flashcards. I think I had around 90 or even more flashcards for my current story, but in a way it was not confusing at all. It was easy for me to follow what was happening, and it was easy for me to tick off the scenes after I wrote them. I realize now that my current writing project is not the typical type of story or typical type of format of story you write, so it might not work for all the different types of stories, but I might still try it just in case, because I have fun with this one. And what I did was essentially I wrote the first few scenes that I had in my head that I knew had to happen at the beginning on some flashcards, and then wrote just random scenes that I knew I wanted to include in my book, but I wasn't yet sure how to or when and how to include them. So just wrote them on separate flashcards. Then I went to do my character profile sheets, and after this I went back to my flashcards with some new ideas, so I wrote some new flashcards, and I all of a sudden had an idea of how to structure them and how to of the order that I wanted for them to be in. So yeah, that was a really fun method. It sounds bizarre, it sounds messy, but it actually was not. And as I said, I realized that my current writing project is not the typical format of story that you write, but it was a fun method, so I recommend checking it out. And last but not least is a plotting method that I recently heard of, and I don't know much about, I haven't tried it, but it sounded interesting, and this is the Freytag pyramid. This one is one that was created in the 19th century, but is still one that many writers and screenwriters more like still use. And it was created by the German playwright Gustav Freytag. And he believed that every story can pretty much be broken into two parts, play and counterplay, and in the middle is the climax of the stories. And he also said that each story has five actions in a way. We have the introduction, we have the exciting force, I think, then we have the rising action, the climax in the middle, and then we have the falling action and the resolution or catastrophe, depending on the story. So what you essentially do when you're using this plotting method is on a line you write beginning, middle, and end. And then you write a triangle, you draw a triangle or a pyramid, and then on the part where the beginning is, you write introduction, exciting force, rising movement. In the middle, you write the climax, and then falling action and resolution or catastrophe. It sounds a bit confusing to me, not gonna lie. I haven't tried it, I haven't researched this method a lot, but it might be useful for certain types of writing, so I wanted to mention it in the video. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up today's video. I really hope you enjoyed watching, and if you did, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on my new videos. Please let me know down in the comments if you've used any of those writing techniques, or what plotting methods do you usually use. Thank you once more for watching, and I really hope to see you all next time. Until then, have a smiley week. Bye!